On Christmas Eve, I arrived at my son's house full of excitement, ready to spend the holiday with him. But the moment I stepped through the door, his wife looked me in the eyes and said coldly, "There's no place for you here tonight." She shoved a paper plate of scraps into my hands and pointed to the floor, as if I were nothing more than a dog. My heart broke, and I walked out into the night alone. But what happened the very next day changed everything. Secrets came out, truths exploded, and the world she had carefully built began to collapse in front of everyone. For the first time, I wasn't the one losing. I was the one standing tall. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, because when you stop doing this, YouTube understands that you don't like this content and stops recommending good stories like this. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. On Christmas Eve, I arrived at my son's house full of excitement, hoping to feel close to my family and share a special night together. I had imagined hugs, warmth, and laughter as soon as I walked through the door. But instead, his wife greeted me with an expression that was cold and sharp, almost like she had been waiting for me just to do this. She didn't say welcome. She didn't even step aside kindly. She told me, in a flat voice, that there was no place for me at their dinner table that night. My heart sank, and I stood there frozen, not knowing how to answer. Then, as if she wanted to make her message stronger, she shoved a paper plate into my hands. It wasn't filled with food prepared for me. It had scraps, leftovers, as if I didn't deserve a proper meal. She pointed at the floor and acted like I should sit there, like an unwanted animal. I felt my chest tighten as I looked at the table already set for others. Plates, glasses, candles, everything neatly arranged, but no place for me. It hit me that this wasn't just a sudden decision. It was planned. She wanted me to feel small, to feel like I didn't belong. Her smile wasn't warm or welcoming. It was a grin that showed she enjoyed what she was doing. She made sure her words and actions had an effect, as if she wanted to stab me with them. My mind went blank for a moment, and I stood still with that plate in my hand, not knowing what to do next. I could hear laughter coming from the dining room, the sound of chairs being pulled, and I realized that everyone was already sitting down without even noticing me. The door behind me was still open, letting in the cold air, and I felt even colder inside my chest. For years, I had tried to be part of my son's life, even when things were hard between us. I had forgiven things. I had kept quiet when I should have spoken, all just to be near him. And yet, here I was, being treated like an outsider in his own house. I wanted to see my son come out and say something, to show me that he still cared, but he didn't. Maybe he was too busy. Maybe he didn't even know what his wife had done. But the silence was too loud. It made me realize how far I had been pushed away. I thought of all the times I had cooked meals for him, all the holidays I had prepared when he was little, and how I always made sure he felt loved. And now, in return, I was given scraps on a paper plate and told to sit on the floor. The weight of that truth almost made me collapse. I tried to swallow the pain, but it burned in my throat. I stared at the plate for a long time, not even able to eat the food on it. It wasn't food, it was humiliation served straight into my hands. I thought maybe if I forced a smile, if I acted like it didn't matter, I could still stay and see him. But deep inside, something broke. I knew it wasn't just about that night. It was about everything that had been building up over time. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a bad day or a misunderstanding. She wanted me gone, and she wanted me to know it. That realization made my body heavy, and for the first time, I felt like I didn't have the strength to keep fighting for my place there. The cruelty was clear in every detail. The way the chairs were set just right, the way she leaned against the doorway watching me, the way her eyes sparkled with satisfaction. It was like she had rehearsed the whole scene, making sure I understood I was not welcome. I wondered if my son had agreed, if he had known, or if she had kept him in the dark. That thought tore me apart even more. Because if he knew, then it meant he had chosen her side over me. And if he didn't know, then it meant he was blind to the suffering she was causing. Both options were painful, and I didn't know which was worse. I tried to picture him walking in, smiling at me, maybe saving me from that humiliation. But it didn't happen. I stayed there with my back against the wall, while laughter filled the room without me. In that moment, something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, but a new feeling rose from deep inside, anger mixed with clarity. I realized I had spent too much of my life swallowing pain, pretending it was okay when it wasn't. I had allowed too many moments like this to pass without speaking up. But that night, staring at that paper plate, I understood that silence would only let the cruelty grow. I didn't have to keep playing the role of the quiet, forgotten guest. Something stronger took hold of me. I didn't say much out loud, but in my mind, I made a decision. No more. No more humiliation. No more silence. That night, on Christmas Eve, in the house of my own son, I stopped accepting the idea that this was normal. Something in me changed forever. She didn't expect that I had already seen too much. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, holding it firmly in my hand so she could see I wasn't bluffing. Her smirk disappeared the moment I opened the gallery. I scrolled slowly until the images appeared on the screen. Her walking into hotels with her boss, her laughing at dinners that were clearly not work-related, her arm brushing against him in a way that didn't look innocent at all. I raised the phone higher so she couldn't look away. Her eyes flickered, and I saw panic rise in her face. My voice came out steady, even though my heart was pounding. I told her that, unlike her, even dogs know how to be loyal. The words cut through the tension, and I could almost hear her breath stop for a second. The paper plate she had shoved at me earlier suddenly looked even cheaper compared to the truth I was now holding in my hands. Her expression froze, as if the life had drained out of her. The color in her cheeks vanished, leaving her face pale like she had been caught red-handed, which she had. She opened her mouth as if to answer, but nothing came out. She looked from me to the phone, as if she was hoping it was a trick, that the pictures weren't real. But I stayed silent, letting her see every detail. I didn't need to say much. The images did the talking for me. Her fingers twitched nervously, like she wanted to grab the phone but knew she couldn't. She stepped back a little, and for the first time that night, I saw fear instead of arrogance. I let her feel it, because she had planned her little show against me, but she hadn't prepared for mine. I was no longer the quiet, humiliated woman in the corner. I had proof, and she knew it. Before she could even form an excuse, I pressed the screen and hit send. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I just tapped a button and sent everything straight to my son. Every picture, every detail. My finger trembled slightly, but I didn't stop. She gasped, and her hand shot forward as if she could stop the message, but it was too late. The whoosh sound confirmed it was gone. My son had it all now, in his hands, no filter, no excuses. I stood there staring at her, calm on the outside, even though my pulse raced inside me. Her lips moved, whispering something like please or wait, but she couldn't undo what I had already done. I had spent too many nights crying over her cruelty, too many moments doubting myself. Now it was her turn to feel cornered. From the dining room, the sound of a phone notification cut through the chatter and laughter. It was loud enough for everyone to hear. I froze for a moment, realizing that was his phone, my son's phone. The house grew quiet right after, the kind of silence that makes the air feel heavier. I imagined him looking at the screen, scrolling through the photos, confusion turning to shock, then shock turning into something else. No one spoke. Even the sound of forks and knives scraping against plates stopped. The silence was louder than any scream. She turned toward the dining room, her body stiff, her hands shaking. For the first time, she wasn't in control. The show she had tried to put on for me had flipped, and now every pair of eyes inside was about to turn on her. The seconds stretched like hours. I stayed near the doorway, gripping my phone tightly, not sure if I should step forward or stay put. She glanced back at me with eyes full of desperation, like she was silently begging me not to let it go further. But it was already out of my hands. The proof was there, undeniable, and soon enough my son would walk out with questions she couldn't answer. I thought of all the times she had smirked at me, spoken down to me, tried to erase me from his life. All that arrogance was gone. Her shoulders slumped, and I noticed her knees tremble slightly, as though she could barely stand. For years I had been the one shrinking under her coldness, but now it was her turn to shrink under the weight of the truth. And there, standing in that tense silence, I understood something I had never allowed myself to believe before. I was not the one on the ground anymore. I was not the one being treated like I didn't matter. She was the one trembling, not me. She was the one who had been caught, who was about to be exposed in front of everyone she thought she had fooled. My son, her friends, The whole family would know who she really was. That power wasn't something I had planned to take, but it was mine now. I had walked into that house thinking I would have to swallow another humiliation, but I walked out with the truth on my side. And for the first time that night, I realized she wasn't looking down on me anymore. She was the one on her knees, even if she hadn't fallen yet. Daniel walked into the room, his face pale and his phone tight in his hand. He didn't shout. He didn't ask questions right away. He just stood there, scrolling through the photos I had sent him, his eyes moving quickly, then slowing down, then stopping completely on one of them. His silence was heavier than words. Melissa, who had always been confident and full of herself, suddenly looked small. She rushed to his side, trying to grab his arm, whispering excuses, talking fast, almost tripping over her own words. But he didn't even look at her. His focus stayed on the screen, on the truth he couldn't deny. I watched the moment unfold, my body tense but steady. I knew it was time to step inside the room. Slowly, I walked in, holding the paper plate she had shoved at me earlier, still stained with scraps, and lifted it high enough for everyone to see. The room froze. People who had been laughing minutes before stared in shock. Forks were abandoned on plates. Glasses were left untouched. The noise of the gathering had disappeared, replaced by silence so thick it almost hurt. All eyes moved between me, the plate in my hand, and Melissa, who stood next to Daniel, trembling. The perfect hostess they thought they knew, the woman who had invited them for a night of elegance and fine dining, now looked exposed and pitiful. Her carefully built image of charm and control cracked in front of them. No one needed an explanation. They could see it in Daniel's face, in her panic, and in my gesture. The contrast between the beautiful table she had prepared and the dirty paper plate I held was too strong to ignore. It spoke louder than anything I could have said. Everyone understood what had been going on. Melissa tried to laugh it off, but her voice shook and betrayed her. She claimed it was a joke, that I had misunderstood her intentions, but her words fell flat. No one believed her. Daniel still hadn't spoken, but his silence said more than anything else could. He stood stiff, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the phone. I could almost see the moment when his trust in her collapsed. Guests shifted in their seats uncomfortably. Some looked down at their laps, others glanced at each other with raised eyebrows. A few couldn't hide the disgust on their faces. They were her friends, her colleagues, her chosen audience, and now they were witnesses to her downfall. No one reached out to defend her. No one spoke up in her favor. The paper plate in my hand was enough to ruin her act completely. The air was heavy with judgment, and Melissa couldn't escape it. It didn't take long for the dinner to fall apart. One of the men cleared his throat and stood up, muttering that it was getting late. A woman followed, grabbing her purse, her expression tight and cold. Soon, chairs scraped against the floor as one guest after another excused themselves, avoiding Melissa's desperate gaze. Some didn't even try to be polite. They simply left without a word. The clinking of silverware being dropped back onto plates was the only sound breaking the silence. Melissa stood frozen, her hands shaking, her smile forced and failing. She begged for them to stay, promising explanations, but her words had no power anymore. The dinner that was supposed to strengthen her reputation and her social ties had collapsed in front of her eyes. She tried to keep her voice cheerful, but her desperation was obvious. One by one, every guest walked out, leaving behind only the wreckage of her plan. The room that had been full of chatter and laughter just minutes earlier was now empty. The candles still burned on the table. The food remained untouched, but the energy was gone. The house echoed with the sound of the front door closing again and again until there was no one left. Melissa stood near the table, her shoulders slumped, her eyes wet but still wide with disbelief. Daniel stayed where he was, still pale, still silent, still holding the phone like it weighed a ton. The mess was hers, and there was no one left to help her hide it. The friends she had worked so hard to impress had seen the truth and judged her. The colleagues she had wanted to charm had walked out with disgust. The walls of her home, once filled with laughter and pretense, now closed in on her with nothing but silence. And there, in that heavy silence, the truth was impossible for her to cover anymore. The woman who had humiliated me, who had tried to make me feel worthless, now stood stripped of her lies in front of her own husband and an empty room. Without her audience, without her perfect image, she was exposed. The paper plate, still in my hand, said everything. She was no longer the perfect wife or the gracious hostess. She was just Melissa, caught in her own cruelty, left standing in the ruins of the evening she thought she controlled. Daniel didn't move, I didn't move, and she couldn't move. The silence around us was almost crushing, a silence that screamed the truth louder than any fight could. In that moment, Melissa stood naked in her lie, without the applause and approval she had always relied on. For once, she was the one left with nothing. Alone at last, the words turned sharp like blades. Daniel stood in front of her, still holding the phone, and his questions came out one after another. His voice wasn't loud, but it was heavy, full of disbelief and anger. "How long?" he asked. "Why him? Why lie to me?" Melissa tried to keep her composure, but her hands were shaking, and her eyes darted around the room like she was searching for an escape. She didn't answer his questions directly. Instead, she turned toward me, her voice rising, accusing me of jealousy, of trying to control his life, of never liking her from the beginning. Her words were desperate, filled with excuses, but I didn't need to defend myself with anger. I only reminded her of the facts, the things she couldn't twist. I repeated the truth he had already seen with his own eyes. The pictures, the lies, the way she had treated me like an intruder in her home. Melissa tried harder, almost shouting now, saying I had always wanted to separate them, that I couldn't stand to see him happy without me. She pointed at me as if I were the problem, as if her betrayal could somehow be hidden behind blaming me. But Daniel didn't buy it. His eyes stayed fixed on her, his face pale but determined. I could see in him a man piecing together everything, finally looking at her without the blindfold she had tied around him. I reminded her, calm but firm, of what she had done that very night, shoving a paper plate into my hands like I was nothing. I reminded her of the times she had spoken badly about family, cutting me out, isolating him. Each fact I said out loud made her voice shake more. She wanted to twist the story, but the truth was too strong, too obvious to ignore anymore. Daniel started connecting the dots. He spoke slowly, like someone finally waking up from a dream. "So, all this time," he said, "you weren't just lying about him. You were lying about us." His words hung in the air, and Melissa's face turned stiff. She tried to reach out for him, her voice softer now, pretending to be hurt, but it was too late. He shook his head, stepping back from her touch. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting him see it clearly, letting him process what had been in front of him all along. Melissa's excuses crumbled with every second of silence. For years, she had played the role of the perfect wife, but tonight, the mask had fallen, and Daniel was staring at the reality. He saw her not only as unfaithful, but as someone who had disrespected his family, his roots, and the very home he thought they had built together. Her tone changed again, switching from angry to pleading. She begged him to listen, to believe that it was just a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But Daniel wasn't the same anymore. I could see it in his eyes. Something had broken inside him, but at the same time something else had been freed. He wasn't looking at her with love or trust anymore. He was looking at her like a stranger, someone who had stolen years of his life with lies. I reminded her gently that loyalty isn't a mistake, that respect for family isn't something you can fake. She flinched at my words, but Daniel nodded slowly, agreeing without saying much. For once, I didn't feel like I was the one fighting to keep my son. He was fighting to take back his own life, to finally see her for what she truly was. That gave me strength to keep standing firm. Melissa tried one last time to turn the situation on me, saying that I had poisoned his mind, that I wanted to control him because I was afraid of losing him. She cried, her tears loud and messy, but they felt empty. I didn't answer her lies anymore. I just stood still, watching Daniel make his own conclusions. He finally said, "Stop. Don't blame her. You did this." His words stopped her in place, her sobs caught in her throat. He was no longer under her spell, no longer making excuses for her behavior. He had seen enough, heard enough, and felt enough. In that moment, I realized that the battle wasn't between me and her at all. The truth had drawn its own line, and she had placed herself on the wrong side. For all the years she thought she was winning, she had only been building the ground for her own fall. In this confrontation, it became clear that I wasn't the one at risk of losing him. It was Melissa who was losing everything she had pretended to hold together. She had built her world on lies, on betrayal, and on pushing people away, and now it was collapsing in front of her. Daniel looked at her with clear eyes, free of the illusions she had woven around him. For the first time, I saw him truly free, no longer chained by the false image she had created. He looked at me briefly, and I saw relief in his face, mixed with pain, but also strength. He wasn't the same son who had allowed himself to be blinded. He had finally broken out of her trap. And standing there, watching her crumble, I understood that the truth had done what I could never do alone. It had opened his eyes and freed him from her spell once and for all. The next morning, the consequences came knocking one by one. The house was quiet, but the silence didn't last long. Daniel's phone started buzzing with calls and messages that wouldn't stop. At first, he ignored them, but then a notification from his company appeared, and I could see the shock on his face as he read it. The news had spread fast, faster than either of us could have imagined. Melissa's affair with her boss was no longer just a private disaster. It had become public. The company knew, and it was impossible to cover it up anymore. While Daniel read through the flood of texts, Melissa stood nearby, pale and restless, trying to speak but choking on her words. Every time the phone rang, her shoulders tensed, as if each call carried another piece of her downfall. I sat in the kitchen, watching everything unfold, knowing there was no turning back from what had already started. As the calls continued, Daniel began digging deeper. He opened his laptop, his face set in determination. At first, Melissa tried to stop him, begging him not to check, but he ignored her. Soon enough, the truth poured out. He found hidden expenses, credit card statements full of luxury purchases he had never known about, secret accounts that explained why money had been disappearing for months. His face darkened as he scrolled through the records, realizing that the betrayal went far beyond infidelity. She hadn't only lied about her relationship, she had been reckless with his trust, with their finances, with the very foundation of their home. Each discovery was like another piece of a puzzle finally falling into place, except the picture it created was uglier than he could have expected. Melissa's eyes filled with panic, and she kept repeating that it wasn't what it looked like, but nothing could erase the proof. The lies stretched further than even Daniel had imagined. Hidden debts stared back at him from the screen. Thousands of dollars that he hadn't approved, money spent on things that had nothing to do with their family. Vacations disguised as work trips, jewelry that never made it to their home, hotel charges under false names. It was all there, clear as daylight. Melissa's voice grew louder, desperate, as she tried to explain away each one, but her excuses sounded thinner with every word. The more she talked, the more obvious it became that she was drowning in her own lies. Her calm, controlled mask from the night before was gone. Now she was frantic, pacing the living room, grabbing his arm, pleading with him to listen. But Daniel didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed on the evidence, his face hardening with each page he turned. The weight of all the hidden truths was crushing her, and she knew it. By mid-morning, Melissa's tone had completely changed. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't defensive. She was begging. She dropped to her knees at one point, clutching Daniel's hands, promising that she could fix it, that none of it had to matter if he forgave her. Her tears fell fast, her words tripping over each other in desperation. But her begging didn't soften him. Instead, it seemed to make him colder, more resolved. He told her to stop lying, to stop trying to twist the story, because he had seen enough. I watched the scene unfold, my heart heavy but steady. For years, she had made me feel powerless, but now it was her who had no control, her who was stripped of every excuse. Her voice cracked as she tried to say she loved him, but even that sounded fake, like just another line in the long list of things she had pretended to be. Daniel finally spoke clearly, breaking through the storm of her pleas. His words were steady, without anger, but also without softness. He told her that he needed time, that he couldn't keep living under her lies, and that she needed to leave the house. The room went still after he said it, and Melissa's face twisted in disbelief. She shook her head, trying to argue, but he didn't waver. He stood up, moved toward the door, and repeated that she had to go. For once, she realized there was nothing she could say to change his mind. All the tricks she had used before, tears, blame, charm, meant nothing now. He was no longer blind, no longer under her control. Melissa looked around the house as if searching for support, but there was no one left to defend her. She was alone, cornered by the truth she had created for herself. For the first time, Melissa's words had no power. Her pleas echoed in the room, but they didn't move Daniel. He stood tall, calm, and unshaken, and I could see the strength in his decision. The woman who had spent years pretending to be perfect, who had controlled the story and pushed me aside, was now powerless in her own home. She had built everything on lies, her marriage, her image, her reputation, and now all of it had collapsed. The debts, the affair, the betrayals had formed a chain around her neck, pulling her down with every second. Melissa begged again, her voice breaking, but this time it was clear that no words could save her. Daniel opened the door, his eyes steady as he told her to leave. And in that moment, it became real. No plea, no performance, nothing at all could save her now. She had finally lost everything. When the silence finally settled, it was just me and my son left in the room. The house that had been full of voices only hours before now felt still, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind that comes after a storm has passed. Daniel looked at me, his face tired, his eyes red from everything that had happened, but there was something different in his expression. He asked softly if I was okay, his voice almost cautious, like he wasn't sure what I would say after everything I had endured. For the first time in a long time, I didn't hesitate with my answer. I told him I was better than ever, and I meant it. I hadn't just stood my ground against humiliation. I had reclaimed my dignity. I had also regained something even more precious, my bond with him. He stared at me for a moment, and then smiled, a weak but genuine smile. That smile carried so much. It was full of exhaustion, but also full of freedom. It was the smile of someone who had finally woken up from a nightmare and could breathe again. For years, I had been afraid that I had lost him forever, that the distance between us had been sealed by her manipulations. But at that moment, I could see the truth in his eyes. He was no longer blinded. He saw me, not as the outsider she had painted me to be, but as his mother, the one who had always been there for him. The tension between us seemed to melt, replaced by a quiet relief. We didn't need long speeches. The silence we shared carried the weight of understanding. For once, we were on the same side again. It was a moment I had waited for, prayed for, and almost given up on. Now, it was finally real. Daniel leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face, and let out a deep breath. Then he laughed, not loudly, but enough to break the heavy air. He said that maybe, after everything, next Christmas should be different. He looked at me and asked if I could host the family gathering at my house. I didn't answer right away. I let the request sink in. After being pushed out, humiliated, and made to feel unwelcome, it was surreal to hear him ask that. But the sincerity in his voice left no doubt. He wanted to rebuild. My heart swelled, and I smiled, agreeing, but I added one condition. If I hosted, he would be the one responsible for washing the dishes. He chuckled, the kind of laugh that felt natural again, and nodded without hesitation. That little exchange, light and simple, carried more meaning than any long promise could. We stayed sitting for a while, both of us too drained to move quickly, but at peace. The anger, the betrayal, the shouting, it was all behind us now. Melissa's lies had left scars, but they had also revealed truths we had been avoiding. I realized that the fight had given me back not only my voice, but also my place in his life. He wasn't under her shadow anymore. He was his own man. And for the first time in years, I felt like he truly belonged to himself. I also felt like I had gotten my son back. The distance that had once seemed impossible to cross was gone. I didn't need to say it out loud, but deep down, I knew. We had been broken, but we weren't beyond repair. That night had been the breaking point, but it had also been the start of something new. Eventually, I stood up and got ready to leave. I wrapped myself in my coat, and Daniel followed me to the door. He hugged me, not quickly, not out of obligation, but with real warmth, holding on as if he didn't want to let go. I felt his gratitude in that hug, his regret, and his love all at once. He whispered that he was sorry for not seeing the truth sooner, but I told him it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that now, he saw it clearly. We stepped outside together, and the cold air hit us, sharp but refreshing. The street was quiet, the snow covering everything like a clean slate. I walked away with a heart lighter than it had been in years, knowing that something had shifted permanently between us. As I stepped out into the snowy street, I felt a wave of renewal. The night had stripped away lies, exposed cruelty, and nearly torn us apart, but it had also given me clarity. I wasn't broken, I wasn't small, and I wasn't alone. I had discovered strength I didn't know I had, and I had reclaimed the bond with my son that I thought was lost forever. Melissa had tried to reduce me to nothing, but instead, her actions revealed who I truly was and what I was capable of standing up against. Daniel walked back inside, carrying his own burdens, but also a new freedom. I looked around, the snow crunching beneath my feet, and I smiled to myself. Sometimes it's only when someone tries to erase us that we finally understand our worth. And that morning, I understood mine better than ever before. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.